The galaxy believed humanity would surrender after a single devastating strike. That belief became the greatest mistake in its history. Long before the first declaration of war was ever transmitted, long before fleets gathered beneath distant suns, countless civilizations had already reached the same conclusion about the young species from Earth. Humans were emotional, divided, reckless. Their governments argued endlessly, their cultures disagreed on almost everything, and their worlds seemed too scattered to survive a coordinated assault. To the ancient empires that had ruled the stars for thousands of years, humanity looked less like a rising power and more like an accident of evolution that had wandered too far from its home planet. They studied Earth's broadcasts, watched its history of internal conflict, and quietly marked the species as one that would eventually kneel. After all, every civilization before them had. Fear was universal. Survival always came before pride. Or so the galaxy believed. Then, without warning, the night sky changed forever. Across the Orion frontier, humanity's outermost colonies vanished almost simultaneously. There was no glorious battle, no desperate last stand visible to the public. Entire worlds simply disappeared from communication networks one by one, their bright signals extinguished like candles in an endless storm. Orbital stations that had bustled with life only moments earlier became silent rings of drifting steel. Freight convoys arrived to find planets wrapped in clouds of ash and shattered satellites tumbling through orbit like broken memories. Emergency beacons screamed into the darkness, their automated distress signals repeating the same desperate message until power cells finally died. Families on Earth watched live feeds collapse into static, unable to understand why familiar voices had suddenly been replaced by silence. Every unanswered transmission carried the unbearable weight of millions of lives that had simply stopped. Far beyond those dying systems, hidden behind layers of encrypted military channels, the architects of the invasion celebrated. Massive alien command vessels floated above conquered worlds while admirals congratulated one another on the flawless execution of their opening strike. They had calculated every variable with cold precision. Human supply routes had been severed. Defensive fleets had been destroyed before they could regroup. Communication relays had fallen exactly according to schedule. The strategy was perfect because perfection had defined their civilization for centuries. Their analysts predicted that Earth's governments would collapse into panic within days. Civil unrest would spread. Military leaders would argue. Surrender would become inevitable. They had not merely attacked human colonies, they believed they had broken the human spirit before the real war had even begun. On Earth, an impossible silence settled over cities that never truly slept. Crowded streets emptied as people stood frozen before towering public screens displaying only lists of missing worlds. No speeches came from world leaders. No promises of swift victory echoed across the networks. Only the quiet hum of emergency broadcasts and the distant wail of evacuation sirens drifted through the night air. In homes, military bases, and underground command centers, one haunting question echoed through every frightened mind. Was this the end? Had humanity's brief journey among the stars lasted only long enough to provoke an enemy far beyond its understanding? But somewhere beneath the fear, something else began to awaken. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It wasn't vengeance, either. It was older than both, an instinct forged long before humanity ever dreamed of spaceflight. An instinct carried through ice ages, world wars, collapsing civilizations, and every impossible catastrophe that had threatened to erase the species from existence. The invaders believed they had destroyed humanity's future. What they failed to understand was that when humans lose everything they love, they stop fighting for victory, and start fighting because there is nothing left to fear. In that quiet, terrible moment, as the stars themselves seemed to mourn, the galaxy unknowingly crossed a line from which there would be no return. Humanity had not been defeated. Humanity had only just decided to fight. Deep beneath the frozen mountains of Luna, where kilometers of ancient basalt and solid ice sealed away humanity's deepest secrets, a single pulse of crimson light broke decades of perfect silence. One by one, dormant systems awakened. Massive fusion reactors, untouched since the day they were entombed, roared back to life with a low, thunderous vibration that echoed through endless metallic corridors. Dust that had rested undisturbed for generations drifted into the air as colossal blast doors slowly parted, revealing a command complex so immense it resembled an underground city rather than a military installation. This was Atlas Strategic Command, a fortress whose existence had been erased from every public record, every government archive, and every known intelligence network. Even most world leaders believed it to be nothing more than a discarded Cold War myth. Yet it had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. Commander Elias Ward opened his eyes to the cold glow of holographic displays surrounding his stasis chamber. For a brief second, the silence felt almost unreal. Then the alarms reached him. Not loud. Not frantic. Calm, deliberate tones, the kind designed for people trained to think while the universe was falling apart. As the transparent lid lifted, freezing vapor rolled across the polished floor, and the scent of sterilized metal filled the air. Ward stepped out slowly, his muscles stiff from suspended animation, his heartbeat gradually synchronizing with the rhythm of the awakening facility. Before anyone spoke a single word, he already knew. Protocol Atlas had never been intended for political crises or border conflicts. It existed for only one scenario: the extinction-level threat humanity had always prayed would never come. A wall of holographic stars ignited before him, stretching across the vast operations chamber like a living galaxy suspended in glass. Hundreds of systems flickered in brilliant blues and golds, but too many had already faded into ominous crimson. Human colonies blinked out one after another as delayed telemetry finally reached Luna. Some transmitted only fragments of desperate distress calls before disappearing forever. Others simply vanished without explanation, leaving empty coordinates where thriving civilizations had existed only hours earlier. Every fading light represented millions of lives, entire cities, histories, dreams, and futures erased in silence. Ward stared at the map without speaking. He had spent his entire career preparing for this possibility, yet seeing it unfold with his own eyes felt like watching pieces of humanity itself being torn away. Around him, Atlas came fully alive. Officers emerged from their own stasis chambers with disciplined precision, their expressions calm despite the catastrophe unfolding overhead. Autonomous maintenance drones drifted through the cavernous halls, repairing systems that had slept for decades. Towering quantum processors began calculating battle scenarios measured not in hours but in milliseconds. Deep beneath the facility, hidden hangars unlocked layer after layer of security seals, exposing weapons platforms and command vessels whose designs had never appeared in any official fleet registry. Humanity's visible military had always represented only a fraction of its true strength. While politicians debated peace across generations, engineers, scientists, and strategists had quietly prepared for the day diplomacy failed completely. Far above the moon's frozen surface, Earth still looked deceptively peaceful. Oceans shimmered beneath scattered clouds. Megacities glowed against the darkness, unaware that ancient defense protocols were awakening beneath their feet. Across the planet, beneath deserts, beneath mountain ranges, beneath the crushing pressure of the deepest oceans, hidden vaults silently received encrypted activation codes transmitted directly from Atlas. On forgotten asteroids drifting through empty space, dormant shipyards stirred to life. Artificial intelligences, asleep for nearly a century, opened their eyes and began assembling fleets from raw materials harvested long ago. Humanity had never sought to dominate the galaxy. Every treaty it signed, every alliance it built, had been genuine. But history had taught one lesson that no generation ever forgot: hope was never a substitute for preparation. Commander Ward slowly placed his hand against the glowing command console at the center of Atlas Strategic Command. The system recognized his identity instantly. Across countless hidden installations spread throughout human space, a single encrypted message echoed simultaneously through machines that had waited generations to hear it. Atlas Protocol confirmed. Humanity's final contingency is now active. The words faded into silence. And somewhere beyond the stars, an empire that believed it had already won continued advancing toward a civilization that had only just revealed its first secret. The reports arrived faster than anyone could read them. Every few seconds, another transmission flashed across the immense holographic display inside Atlas Strategic Command, each one carrying the same unbearable pattern: another colony lost, another fleet destroyed, another evacuation cut short before it could escape. Entire sectors of human space slowly dimmed into crimson as communications fell silent one by one. There were no dramatic speeches from the frontier anymore, only fragmented recordings recovered from damaged satellites, the crackling voice of a station commander ordering civilians toward escape pods, the terrified whisper of a child asking why the stars outside had turned red, the final burst of static as another signal vanished forever. The command center remained eerily quiet. No one spoke unless absolutely necessary. Every officer understood that history was collapsing around them in real time. Beyond Earth's borders, the refugee convoys stretched across the void like wounded ghosts. Civilian transports, mining vessels, cargo freighters, anything capable of carrying life, drifted toward the inner systems under constant escort by exhausted human patrol ships. Their hulls bore fresh scars from battles they had never been designed to fight. Some vessels carried thousands packed into corridors meant for hundreds. Medical bays overflowed with survivors suffering burns, radiation exposure, and the invisible trauma of watching entire worlds disappear behind them. Through observation windows, families stared silently into the darkness, hoping to catch one final glimpse of homes they already knew no longer existed. The stars seemed colder now, as though space itself had become a witness unwilling to intervene. Then the enemy spoke. Without warning, every surviving communication network, from military frequencies to civilian emergency broadcasts, was overridden by a single transmission. Across countless screens appeared the insignia of the Galactic Dominion, glowing with cold, geometric perfection. An alien figure emerged from the darkness, its expression unreadable, its voice translated flawlessly into every known human language. There was no anger in its tone. No hatred. Only certainty. Asterisk, your resistance has been measured. Asterisk. Asterisk, your defeat has been calculated. Asterisk. Asterisk, surrender immediately, and your extinction will be swift. Asterisk. The message repeated endlessly across the solar system before abruptly ending, leaving behind a silence heavier than any explosion. Across Earth, billions listened. Some wept openly. Others clenched trembling fists. In underground shelters beneath sprawling megacities, children looked toward their parents for answers that did not exist. Farmers abandoned fields that had fed generations. Scientists shut down research laboratories to volunteer for emergency defense projects. Veterans who believed their wars were long behind them quietly unpacked uniforms they had hoped never to wear again. The fear was real, raw, suffocating, impossible to deny. For the first time since humanity reached the stars, extinction no longer felt like an abstract possibility. It felt close enough to touch. Even inside Atlas, doubt crept into hearts trained never to show it. Senior admirals studied projections displaying impossible odds. The Dominion possessed thousands of capital ships. Humanity could field only a fraction of that number in open combat. Probability models collapsed into defeat after defeat regardless of strategy. Some officers exchanged silent glances, wondering whether history had finally reached its unavoidable conclusion. Was preparation enough against an enemy this overwhelming? Had centuries of hidden planning simply delayed the inevitable? Commander Elias Ward remained motionless before the tactical display. His eyes weren't fixed on the casualty reports. They weren't studying fleet numbers. Instead, they followed the movement patterns of the invading armadas. Again. And again. And again. Something refused to fit. Every Dominion fleet advanced with flawless synchronization. Every invasion followed identical tactical formations regardless of local conditions. Every retreat occurred at mathematically optimal intervals. Their logistics were impeccable. Their timing absolute. Their commanders trusted algorithms more than instinct, precision more than improvisation. To any other strategist, it was perfection. To Ward, it looked like a prison. "They're brilliant," he murmured quietly, almost to himself. One young intelligence officer looked up. "Sir?" Ward expanded dozens of battlefield recordings simultaneously. Countless holographic formations unfolded before the room, revealing patterns hidden beneath the chaos. "They've never fought an enemy that refuses to behave logically." The room fell silent. Human history had never been orderly. It had been forged through impossible gambles, reckless creativity, desperate improvisation, and ordinary people making extraordinary decisions under unbearable pressure. Humanity didn't survive because it always chose the perfect strategy. It survived because it adapted faster than disaster could consume it. The Dominion believed order created strength. Commander Ward finally understood the truth. That belief would become the weakness that destroyed them. The Dominion's advance toward the Sol system unfolded with absolute confidence. Thousands of warships crossed interstellar space in flawless formation, their engines illuminating the darkness like rivers of molten silver flowing between the stars. Every fleet maintained perfect spacing. Every maneuver followed centuries of refined military doctrine. To the alien High Command, the campaign had become little more than a final march toward inevitable victory. Human resistance had slowed their timetable but had changed nothing. The last significant obstacle now stood before them, the cradle of humanity itself. Admirals exchanged calm predictions of surrender, logistics officers calculated occupation schedules, and political leaders prepared speeches announcing the fall of another civilization. None of them noticed the strange distortions beginning to ripple through the empty region surrounding the Sol system. At first, their sensors dismissed the anomalies as natural gravitational turbulence. Tiny fluctuations appeared near forgotten asteroid fields, rogue moons, and pockets of seemingly empty space where nothing of military value had ever been recorded. Automated systems flagged the readings, analyzed them, and quietly classified them as harmless. But the disturbances did not disappear. They grew stronger. Space itself seemed to shiver, as though invisible hands were pulling at the fabric of reality. Veteran navigators exchanged uneasy glances as their instruments struggled to produce consistent readings. The stars appeared to bend for fractions of a second before returning to normal, leaving behind a lingering sense that something immense was moving just beyond perception. Then the void opened. Entire asteroid belts split apart with deafening silence as colossal metallic structures emerged from within them. Mountains of stone cracked like fragile shells, revealing impossible machines hidden inside for generations. Gigantic defense platforms unfolded layer by layer, each segment rotating with deliberate precision until enormous rings of glowing energy surrounded their cores. Nearby moons that had seemed lifeless suddenly activated, shedding centuries of artificial camouflage as planetary-scale cannons rose from beneath frozen crusts. Across the outer reaches of the solar system, thousands of dormant installations awakened simultaneously, transforming ordinary celestial bodies into an interconnected fortress unlike anything the galaxy had ever imagined. The Dominion's tactical displays erupted with warning symbols faster than their processors could categorize them. Confusion spread through alien command vessels. "Impossible," one fleet commander whispered as new sensor data flooded his bridge. Historical records insisted those asteroids had been scanned dozens of times over the past century. Those moons had shown no artificial signatures. Those regions of space had been completely empty. Yet before them stood weapons large enough to challenge entire armadas. As emergency scans penetrated deeper into the newly revealed structures, an even more disturbing truth emerged. Their architecture wasn't recent. Material analysis estimated construction dates stretching back nearly 200 years, long before humanity had publicly demonstrated the industrial capability to build anything remotely comparable. Hidden archives buried inside Dominion intelligence databases were urgently reopened. Confidential surveillance reports surfaced. Forgotten reconnaissance missions were re-examined. Every investigation reached the same terrifying conclusion. Humanity had been lying. Not through diplomacy. Not through propaganda. Through patience. For centuries, while the galaxy watched Earth's visible expansion and judged its technology by what it chose to reveal, humanity had quietly built an entirely different civilization beneath the surface. Secret shipyards inside hollowed asteroids. Quantum manufacturing facilities buried beneath planetary crusts. Autonomous construction swarms working in complete silence beyond ordinary sensor ranges. Every treaty signed, every peaceful trade mission, every appearance of technological modesty had concealed a far greater truth. Humanity had never been racing to catch up with the older civilizations. It had simply chosen not to show its hand. Then came the final revelation. Deep within the Dominion's oldest encrypted historical archives, records so ancient that most modern officials had never read them, a forbidden document resurfaced. It originated from the long-extinct architects, the first civilization believed to have crossed the galaxy millions of years earlier. For generations, the file had been dismissed as mythology rather than history. Now every surviving High Commander read the same chilling sentence. Beware the children of Earth. A species that survives impossible odds will eventually master impossibilities. Never force them into a war they cannot afford to lose. Silence consumed the Dominion fleet. For the first time since the invasion began, certainty vanished. The humans they believed cornered had never truly entered the battlefield. This had only been the moment they decided to reveal what they had become. The first shot of humanity's counteroffensive was never seen, only felt. Across the Dominion Armada, navigation systems suddenly lurched as space itself folded inward with impossible precision. Entire formations that had advanced in perfect alignment moments earlier found reality bending around them. Then, without warning, hundreds of human dreadnoughts emerged from fractured seams in spacetime behind the invading fleets. They arrived in absolute silence, their dark hulls absorbing the light of nearby stars, their engines glowing with a restrained blue brilliance that spoke not of raw power, but complete control. Before alien commanders could issue a single order, countless autonomous strike craft poured from hidden launch bays like swarms of steel, accelerating through the void with terrifying coordination. Humanity had not merely prepared for this battle. It had rehearsed it for generations. Inside the command bridge of the flagship Resolute, Commander Elias Ward stood motionless before the tactical display. Thousands of red enemy markers crowded the holographic battlefield, yet his expression never changed. Around him, officers worked with calm precision, every movement practiced, every command measured. The room carried no panic, only focus. Ward watched as human formations continuously shifted, breaking apart and reforming faster than Dominion targeting algorithms could predict. Every fleet captain had been granted unprecedented tactical freedom. There were no rigid doctrines. No flawless geometric formations. Human commanders adapted instinctively, exploiting every opening, every hesitation, every unexpected variable. What the Dominion viewed as disorder was, in truth, a battlefield language only humans fully understood. Then Ward activated the fleet-wide transmission. His face appeared simultaneously across military frequencies, civilian broadcasts, and every intercepted Dominion command channel. The bridge behind him remained dimly lit, illuminated only by holographic stars and warning displays. His voice was calm. Steady. Unshakable. You destroyed our homes. The words echoed through thousands of ships. You believed fear would make us surrender. A pause followed. Long enough for every listener to understand. You were wrong. His eyes never left the tactical display. Humanity never starts wars. Another silence. But we always finish them. The transmission ended. No dramatic music. No triumphant speech. Only absolute certainty. The battlefield erupted. Human dreadnoughts unleashed concentrated gravitational lances that tore through enemy command vessels, collapsing armored hulls inward as though crushed by invisible stars. Swarms of autonomous fighters slipped effortlessly between massive Dominion cruisers, disabling shield generators before vanishing into the darkness again. Behind the front lines, civilian engineering ships rushed toward damaged human vessels under relentless fire. Welders, technicians, miners, doctors, and volunteers worked side by side in vacuum-rated suits, repairing battlecruisers within hours instead of weeks. Entire factories hidden inside mobile shipyards began producing replacement fighters while the battle still raged. Every citizen became part of the war effort. Every skill mattered. Humanity fought not as separate worlds, but as one civilization refusing to disappear. The Dominion struggled to adapt. Its commanders waited for perfect calculations while human captains trusted instinct. Its fleets maintained textbook formations while human squadrons constantly rewrote the battlefield. Its artificial intelligences searched for predictable patterns that simply did not exist. Every unexpected maneuver forced another recalculation. Every recalculation consumed precious seconds. Every second cost another flagship. One by one, the Dominion's seemingly invincible armadas fractured under relentless pressure. Entire sectors collapsed as confused admirals lost communication with fleets that had simply ceased to exist. Confidence turned into uncertainty. Uncertainty became panic. And panic spread faster than any weapon humanity possessed. As the final Dominion command ship attempted to retreat beyond the edge of the solar system, it paused just long enough to witness Earth's defense network fully awaken. Hidden fleets emerged from every direction, surrounding the surviving invaders beneath the quiet light of Sol. There would be no celebration. No cries of vengeance. Only exhausted determination written across the faces of those who had sacrificed everything to reach this moment. For the first time in thousands of years, the Dominion understood a truth no simulation had ever predicted. Compassion was never humanity's weakness. It was the reason they fought so fiercely when everything they loved stood behind them. And that realization arrived far too late. Months after the final battle, the galaxy was quiet again, but it was not the peaceful silence that had existed before the war. It was the silence that follows unimaginable loss, when even the stars seem to remember what they have witnessed. Across the former battlefields, shattered warships drifted through space like forgotten monuments, their broken hulls reflecting the distant glow of newborn suns. Rescue vessels moved patiently among the debris, searching for survivors, recovering the fallen, and gathering fragments of history that would never be allowed to disappear. The fires of war had faded, but their echoes lingered in every scarred planet, every damaged station, and every family that waited for loved ones who would never return. Victory had come at a terrible price, and no one who lived through those dark months would ever mistake it for something glorious. The worlds that the Dominion had once condemned to extinction slowly began to breathe again. Construction drones filled silent skies, weaving towering bridges of steel and crystal where cities had been reduced to ash. Children played beneath partially rebuilt domes while engineers restored life support grids that had been shattered during the invasion. Farmers returned to scorched fields with soil brought from neighboring colonies, determined to make life grow where death had ruled. Refugee fleets no longer fled from burning systems, instead, they carried doctors, architects, teachers, and volunteers home. Every rebuilt school, every repaired hospital, every newly planted forest became a quiet act of defiance against those who had believed humanity could be erased. The war had taken countless lives, but it had failed to extinguish the stubborn hope that had always defined the people of Earth. Across the wider galaxy, the story spread faster than any military report ever could. In the grand academies of ancient civilizations, historians rewrote centuries of doctrine. Young cadets who had once studied humanity as a minor emerging species now devoted entire courses to understanding how an underestimated civilization had defeated an empire that had ruled the stars for millennia. Politicians who once mocked Earth's diplomacy now sought alliances built on mutual respect rather than intimidation. Even the surviving commanders of the Dominion abandoned the language of conquest. They had witnessed something none of their simulations had predicted, a civilization that refused to surrender, not because victory was guaranteed, but because protecting one another mattered more than survival itself. Fear had built empires. Humanity had built something stronger. Commander Elias Ward returned to Luna without ceremony. Atlas Strategic Command, once alive with alarms and desperate calculations, had fallen silent again. Emergency lighting gave way to the soft glow of routine operations, while the immense holographic map now displayed flourishing colonies replacing the crimson markers of destruction. Ward walked alone through the vast observation gallery overlooking Earth. The blue planet turned slowly beneath him, peaceful once more, wrapped in shimmering clouds that revealed no trace of the nightmare it had endured. He thought of the friends who had never returned, of the countless names engraved on memorial walls across human space, and of the impossible decisions that had haunted every hour of the war. The victory belonged to them, not to him. It always had. Before leaving the command center, Ward paused beside a newly installed memorial. It contained no statues of soldiers, no towering monuments to military triumph. Instead, a simple wall of polished black stone reflected the faces of everyone who stood before it. Etched across its surface were the names of every colony lost during the opening invasion, every rescue crew that never came home, every civilian who had chosen courage over fear. Above the endless list appeared a single inscription. Asterisk, we endured. Asterisk. Not because they were stronger. Not because they possessed greater weapons. But because they refused to abandon each other when darkness arrived. Years later, travelers crossing the galaxy would still speak of the war in hushed voices. Not as the conflict that nearly destroyed humanity, but as the moment the galaxy finally understood who humans truly were. Peaceful did not mean powerless. Compassion did not mean weakness. Patience did not mean fear. Those lessons became woven into interstellar law, diplomatic treaties, and the collective memory of countless civilizations. Whenever ambitious rulers looked toward Earth and considered repeating the mistakes of the past, they remembered the fate of the Dominion. They remembered the civilization that had mistaken kindness for surrender. And somewhere beneath the endless sea of stars, where the light of soul continued to shine against the darkness, humanity looked toward the future, not with pride born of victory, but with quiet determination born of sacrifice. Because the galaxy had learned a lesson it would never forget. Never provoke the species that fights hardest when it fights for home.